Lesson in leadership from Dr. Fauci this morning, emphasizing there the need to tell the truth, even if it's not what people want to hear. It's a lesson seemingly lost on Fox News personality Tucker Carlson, who is peddling false anti-vaxxer talking points to an audience of millions at a time when polls suggest that nearly half of Trump's supporters will not get the COVID vaccine. Listen.
The administration would like you to take this vaccine. Joe Biden told you last week, if you don't, you can't celebrate the 4th of July. But it turns out there are things we don't know about the effects of this vaccine.
There are a lot of things that Tucker Carlson is. Deaf isn't one of them. I saw him in a little box watching the speech. Joe Biden did not say that. Joining our conversation, Tim Miller, writer-at-large for The Bulwark and the former communications director for Jeb Bush's presidential campaign, and Dr. Peter Hotez, co-director of the Center of Vaccine Development at Texas Children's Hospital, author of the new book, Preventing the Next Pandemic. Dr. Hotez, I'm going to start with you because you've been going into the belly of the disinformation beast. And I know from scientists and doctors, public health officials, the one variable that no one saw coming was how poisoned and misinformed a large block of our population would be. Does it worry you that that is ongoing?
Well, I hate to say I told you so, but I knew it was coming because it really came out of Texas, unfortunately. So this really accelerated in 2015. What happened was the anti-vaccine movement, which had been based on claiming vaccines cause autism, and that never went entirely away. And I spent a lot of time debunking this, took this very odd pivot to political extremism on the far right, to the Tea Party, and really amplified in Texas, beginning around 2015, around the time that the president announced his campaign. Whether or not it was because of it or in spite of it, hard to know. But it latched onto the Tea Party under the banner of health freedom, medical freedom, and we started to see large numbers of kids in Texas denied access to their vaccinations. Parents saying, you can't tell us what to do with our kids. And this spawned the version 2.0 of the anti-vaccine movement, very much linked to the Republican Party, and then expanded across the United States. And then in 2020, what it did was it went from an anti-vaccine movement to the full-on anti-science movement when it campaigned against masks and social distancing. And that's why you saw COVID-19 accelerate in the southern states in the summer and then in the Midwest in the fall. So this is what we're dealing with now, a full-on anti-science movement, which has become front and center of the Republican Party, despite my best efforts to try to contain it. This is what we're dealing with.
Tim, you spend more time sort of in the right-wing information. I don't even know what to call it. It's not an ecosystem because there's no oxygen and there's no light. But I wonder what you think the point is. And I want to just put up the margins by which Trump won in 2016. 10,000 voters in Michigan, 22,000 in Wisconsin, 44,000 in Pennsylvania. This time, the closest margins by which he lost, Arizona, about 10,000, Georgia, about 12,000, Wisconsin, 20,000. My point is, they should be very interested in keeping all their voters alive.
Yeah, look, Nicole, I think that Tucker is less concerned about that, to be honest, and it makes me upset, right? I mean, because it isn't just his viewers that get harmed by this, right? It's the people in their community. You know, the sooner that we get more people vaccinated, the quicker we'll be able to get out of this and get back to normal, which is what everybody on Fox is pretending like they want in the first place, right? It's like you have to, you know, that meme where you have to choose between the red buttons. It's like choose between I want the economy opened and the vaccine, and I want the vaccine, right? Like those two things go together. And so this anti-vaxxer nonsense that Tucker is peddling is because a lot of the viewers believe it. And that's what just makes me so upset, right? Because it's like, what is Tucker getting out of this? You know, like what, and a little bit extra nice ratings one week, you know, a few more viewers than he had last week. I mean, it is not as if he's not getting the vaccine. He hasn't said this. It is just this sense of aggrievement that a rich multimillionaire who has this massive platform is for some reason so aggrieved against all of the other elites that he has to be the contrarian and put his own viewers' lives at risk. And it's the mark of a bad person, and it's really enraging. And you are seeing the real ramifications of this if you look at, and I know that the doctor will have more expertise on this, but if you look at where you're starting to see vaccine availability. Here in California, in the red counties is where you're starting to see vaccine availability, because the people who are, allowed to go get it right now based on the rules set by the state, some of them aren't doing it.
Well, and the sources of information lay over perfectly. It's not a hypothesis. It bears out in the data, Dr. Hotez, that people who get their information from Fox News and describe themselves as Republican men who support Donald Trump are now one of the biggest groups of vaccine hesitant people. And I want them to be protected for the safety and health of themselves and their families, but I also want them to be protected for those that live in my community. Can you beat the virus if that big of a chunk of the population doesn't get vaccinated?
No, unfortunately, with the new variants, particularly this one from the United Kingdom, the B117 variant that's accelerating now in the United States, and up to 50% of the virus isolates now in Texas, Florida, and Georgia. Obviously, all red states are now the B117 variant. We know it's much more transmissible. And what that means is when the reproductive number of the virus goes up, it means you have to vaccinate a higher percentage of the population in order to quench its transmission. And so, the numbers that we were throwing out earlier, 60 to 70% of the U.S. population needs to be vaccinated. Now, unfortunately, the bar's raised. It's 80 to 90%. And that means we're going to need to vaccinate almost every adult and lots of adolescents as well. And so when you have a whole contingent of the country deliberately defiant of mass social distancing and vaccines, it's going to make this very tough. And so one of the things that I've been doing now, which is quite interesting, is I've been going on conservative news outlets, trying to go back on Fox and a couple of times and Newsmax and the others, and to do whatever I can to convince people to get vaccinated and why this will save their lives. It's been tough, though.
How is that? What do they ask you?
Well, one of the and a couple of times this has come up. There's this straw man that's been created around mandates. They're very concerned that the government is going to mandate vaccines or bring in the U.S. military or the National Guard to force people to vaccinate. And I say, look, and again, this comes out of this health freedom, medical freedom nonsense that accelerated in 2015. I say, look, we don't even have the vaccines to even think about mandates. That no one's talking about mandates. And, if you have enough time, you can talk people off the ledge and get them to understand. But it's, I'm up against, who am I? I'm a medical school professor and an academic against a massive disinformation campaign that's unfortunately now brought in the Murdoch media empire. And you also have the Russian government, which is now using this to divide our country further. The U.S. and British intelligence have reported a whole system of weaponized health information or weaponized health communication. So these are formidable opponents. And what we're dealing with now is really a full-on anti-science, I don't know what you want to call it, confederacy or empire that dominates our internet and is even globalizing now. So this is as potent a force to deal with, I contend, as things like nuclear proliferation or global terrorism, because it's now infiltrating into Europe, into Africa. It's going to be a major reason why we won't be able to halt this pandemic.
It's amazing. It's just amazing listening to you talk, to think about all the damage that Donald Trump got and then getting his own vaccines in secret. It's just remarkable. It's a story we will stay on top of. Dr. Peter Hotez.